Wanna talk? So let's talk. Here. Talk. You wanna talk? You gotta talk, you need to talk. News talk.
I talk, you talk to Solomon. I talk, you talk to Solomon. Yeah, let's talk to Solomon. Talk to Solomon.
You gotta talk, you wanna
Good evening and welcome. It's Talk to Solomon time, one of my favorite times, not only because I'm with my friend Chief Steve, because I'm with my friend Dr. Alan Keyes. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Stan. How are you?
Fine, Alan. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing pretty good. Well, today, all things considered. Hi, Chief.
Great to see you tonight.
It's good to be with you.
Alan, I thought we'd start the show with the fact that one of the most well-known men in America, certainly to those on the conservative side, a guy named Rush Limbaugh, who I've met and I know, and I frankly am a fan of his in many ways, just acknowledged that you're right. I'm sure you heard the story. Rush Limbaugh yesterday said the root of the decay in America is abortion. And how many times have you said that?
Well, I've tried to get the point across, I guess, for the last, how long is it now, Stan? I don't even want to say because it kind of makes it clear why I'm wearing this gray beard. But it's got to be 30 years, or going on 30 years, that I have been trying to get folks to focus on the reason why the abortion issue is so telling and so important and so critical. Because to go to the very heart of it, it deals with the foundational premise of America, which is that government exists to secure unalienable rights. But if that premise is the reason for government, then that word rights is critical, isn't it? You can't allow people to redefine it in such a way that it empowers wrongdoing, that it lets folks who are acting in a way that violates the fundamental understanding of the difference between right and wrong, on which our way of life is based, an understanding that acknowledges liberty but understands that liberty to operate within the boundaries of the laws of nature and of nature's God, so that when you get people with power who go beyond those boundaries, you don't have to obey them. You don't have to submit to them because you can stand on your rights, stand on the fact that when you do certain things, those things are authorized by God, and the government doesn't have the prerogative to stop you. And so I think it's been critical. And what we've allowed in abortion is we've essentially allowed them to encourage people in this area that is intimately involved with one of the fundamental aspects of our human nature, which is procreation. We've allowed them to claim that it's okay to completely stamp out your sense of responsibility, the sense of responsibility that's involved, and instead of accepting your obligation before God to care for your child, you'll kill it. But after all, if you can violate the laws of nature and nature's God in that fundamental way, in a matter that's so pervasive and so important to the fundamental building block of society, the family, then the whole idea of unalienable rights is thrown out the window. And you are basically saying you can do whatever you have the power to do. And what I don't understand, Stan, why is it that folks, some of them even call themselves conservative, don't understand that once you have defined right as simple freedom, which is the power to do what you please, you have actually empowered tyranny. And you have destroyed the whole idea of limited government, of constitutional self-government, and of the respect for liberty, grounded in respect for the laws of nature and nature's God, for the God-endowed boundaries and limits of our nature. You've thrown that out the window, and you've destroyed our way of life. And it does please me. I'm glad now that people are thinking in these terms, because I think that that's eventually going to lead folks to start working on these fundamentals in a way that will make it not only difficult but impossible for the totalitarian socialists in both parties to continue with their agenda.
If there was ever an argument with your premise that the Republican Party, now let me be clear. The Democrat Party is dramatically worse than the Republican Party. But the Republican Party, because it's supposed to be on our side and it's very much not, is in many ways worse because it's committing wholesale fraud. Having said that, there can be no question when the likes of Jeb Bush and Marco Rubio, among many, many others, Amnesty, Gramnesty, and McCain and some of those others, are now saying without even so much as a blush that the concepts upon which this nation were based are no longer valid. Now, I'm going to segue into our friend, or our not so much friend, depending on who you are, Snowden, who has done, in my personal opinion, the greatest personal service, the greatest example of sacrifice possibly in the history of our country, in that this man has given up his life, his future, his privacy, his anything, to now live as a bad guy to millions, as a good guy to millions, but as a guy who is like the man with no country. He can never come back to America, and probably will end up being murdered by operatives of our country or some other country. And yet I think what he has done has been the slap in the face, the cold shower that America needs, because right, left, center, male, female, don't know what the hell they are, black, white, pink, purple, everyone in America is now, with very few exceptions, saying, what the hell is going on? Chief?
Well, first I want to go back to the last segment just for a second. And for those people that say the Constitution is no longer valid, I want to remind us where the ideas for that came from. It came from rights from God. So if the rights came from God, it can never be invalid. And then the Constitution, as Dr. Keyes stated, is written and put in force to protect and enforce our rights that we got from God. And the very first one mentioned is life. And so now science has proven that life starts at conception. And so when Americans are conceived and have their own unique DNA at conception, it's our duty from God and our Constitution to protect that life. Now what you just said about Mr. Snowden, I think is very valid, because here's a guy that he's a pretty common guy, and also this may have been his one really good shot at a really good paying career. So he's taken what he had, which was not very much, gotten somewhere with that, and now given all of that up for what he says is the choice between an oppressive government and spilling the beans on them, even though it was illegal. So and I think what we should do is really examine this and not weigh judgment on him too quickly, because what he did is probably illegal, but there are times in society when people have to do something illegal to do something right. So I'm not saying he's right or wrong at the moment, but what he's done, like you said, is uncovered a huge amount of information that we didn't know about. So I'm glad that that's happened. I think in his case we should wait to press judgment or to pass judgment until we find out all of the facts. But it's a good thing he did this, because now we know what's going on with our government.
Alan?
Well, two things, Stan. As I watched the sort of unfolding of the Snowden episode and what's happened with the NSA, two things occurred to me. The first was kind of something I thought of as I was listening to Dick Cheney the other day. And he was he's one of those who is not approving of what Snowden has done, regarded as highly dangerous and posing great problems for the security of this country. And he made the argument that we have to have confidence in our government, because there are things that we're required to do, and if you don't trust the people in government to do them, then they won't get done properly, and so you have to trust them. Here's the problem with that argument, Stan. And it's a problem that's not always going to be the case, but that is absolutely certainly the case right now. How can you trust people in government when they've proven themselves totally untrustworthy? Does that make sense to somebody? Does it even make sense to Dick Cheney? because we are now dealing with a gaggle of politicians from the president on down and bureaucrats, Holder and all these people. And whether it's the Benghazi episode, whether it's the IRS, whether it's the enforcement of the laws against Black Panthers and other folks, they have proven themselves to be, in a pure and simple way, self-serving, deceitful people who have violated their fundamental oath to uphold, protect, and defend the Constitution in every way, and in ways that suggest that that violation isn't incompetence, it's not an accident, it's not a function of not knowing what they're doing or inadvertently doing something and it turns out badly. They want to overthrow the Constitution of this country. They want to depose the sovereignty of the American people. There's no other way to explain this immigration business that they're trying to force down our throat. They want to demoralize this country, destroy our moral character, undermine our self-restraint and responsibility, starting with our young children. And that's why they're promoting these sick agendas that they're promoting, to undermine the natural rights of the family and encourage people to equate the responsible life of people who are trying to raise children in the way that they should go and contribute to the strength of our families with folks who have redefined the function involved away from procreation and toward hedonistic self-satisfaction. All these things hurt us, all these things damage us, and all these things are being done by folks from the top level of the government on through the Congress and on through all the leadership that claims to be political in this country. And you see examples highly clear and visible and constant and persistent in the Obama faction, in the Democrat Party, and in the rhino left-wing leadership that now has a stranglehold on the Republican Party. Will somebody tell me why anybody in their right mind would trust these people? I don't trust them. I have no confidence in them. And that is a phrase I use advisedly, because I actually think there's a mechanism in the Constitution that if we had the kind of leaders that we need, especially in the House right now on the Republican side, we would be able to express and vote and on this confidence that has, and we'd say to all these people, we withdraw our confidence from you. We can't trust you with our national security because you're no longer committed to our sovereignty and the physical security of our borders. We can't trust you with the supervision of our money because you have wasted it in ways that are aimed at bankrupting and destroying us and our future. We can't trust you with our military because you're seeking to demoralize and purposefully destroy our military people. So I would look at Dick Cheney and I'd say, come back and talk to us about trust when there are people that are in the government that we can trust. And when you have stood up like all these people ought to be doing right now and demanded that these people who are obviously committed to an agenda of overthrowing the Constitution be removed from office by impeachment. Instead, they're practically patting these guys on the back now. For what they have done to hurt this nation. Final point, though, Stan. You know what is the worst consequence of having the reign like this of people who are committed to the destruction of America, our Constitution, and our way of life in positions of power like this? It is that lack of confidence then means that we are going to turn against things, even things that may be vitally important to our survival. And that's what worries me about the Snowden episode. I've been kind of like you a little bit, but it may be from a different perspective, reserving judgment. You see, because I do think it's a good thing that Americans are awakening to the totalitarian threat that is now everywhere in evidence. I frankly don't think it took a Snowden, because I've been, as you know, trying to get people to see it, showing them by reasoning what inevitably was going to be happening in this country and what is now happening, and calling things by their right names. Totalitarian moves to overthrow the Constitution, destroy and undermine our fundamental rights in ways that will turn us into an enslaved people. And I've said it over and over again. And so frankly, unlike some, I'm not going to stand up and say, oh, wonderful, somebody's finally shown truth. Nah, a lot of people have been talking about the truth, but folks who have to be hit over the head with a dozen 2x4s haven't been listening. And so out comes Snowden with a 2x4. But you know what I'm worried about, Stan? I'm worried that Snowden's 2x4 might have a nail in it. You know, if you hit the mule upside the head with a 2x4, you could get his attention. If the 2x4 has a lethal nail attached, it will kill the mule. And I am not going to jump on the bandwagon of people who want to suggest that the means, and the superior means, by the way, that we have of gathering intelligence on what is being done by our enemies, that those means are not vital to the survival of this country, because I think they are. I think the worst thing that's happening as a result of this incompetent, anti-American, anti-constitutional administration, aided and abetted by collaborators in the Republican Party, is that the American people are in a crisis of confidence that is going to spill over in such a way as to undermine functions that are vital to the survival of this country in an immediate and physical sense. And that worries me deeply. And I'm looking at Snowden. You know, when he was talking and saying, oh, well, I got to tell the American people about this, I said, okay, all well and good. When he starts talking to the Chinese and to other people around the world, telling them about what we can or cannot do with respect to things that may be vital to our intelligence gathering in defense of our people, then I've got another name for him. And I will boldly speak it, because I'm not going to jump on a bandwagon that throws our national security baby out with the bathwater of our lack of trust and confidence in this anti-American, anti-constitutional, sick generation of leaders that we've got. Final point: if this is all of it true, then instead of jumping on the bandwagon behind this one or that one, why don't we as a people jump on the bandwagon behind our Constitution and our Declaration and our principles and begin to search out and lift up leaders absolutely dedicated to those things, to replace these leaders who have abandoned us on behalf of an elitist faction that is now trying to substitute government of, by, and for the elitist few for government of, by, and for the people under God and respecting their God-endowed rights.
Alan, I'm going to agree and disagree. I agree that we have to do some things. I agree that our safety is dependent on ours staying a step ahead. I'm going to disagree that there's a way to get the attention of the American people by tiptoeing through the tulips. Yes, we've alerted some of the people that would hurt us, but you know what? We have a president, we have a Congress, both parties that have alerted our enemies, do what the hell you want, because we're morons. Because we're going to be more concerned about offending you than killing you, you son of a Obama, because you deserve it. So, yes, he may have done some damage, but I tell you, he did what needed to be done, and I applaud him for it.
As I said, Stan, I think waking the American people up to this, especially those who were stubbornly refusing to see reality, that's a good thing. I must confess, though, I think it's kind of tragic that these people required this kind of a maneuver in order to wake them up. Because it's a maneuver that could prove to be severely, immediately damaging. And I say this advisedly, Stan. And I'd like to remind you that my advised saying of this is because I was once part of that national security establishment. I was on the National Security Council. I helped to defend this country during the Reagan years against our enemies. And I want to tell you straight in the front that I don't believe that we should rejoice in the possibility that we will destroy one of the key advantages that is especially even more important now than it was in the past, because the key chief instrument against those who are assaulting us right now is our intelligence capacity. To see it abused in such a way as to destroy the confidence of our people in it is a high crime and misdemeanor. I agree with you on that. But the answer is not to applaud things that will further destroy our capacities. It is rather to do the needful and kick out of office the people responsible for the activities that are destroying our confidence. And final point, Stan, you always want to reserve some kind of, I don't know what, for the Republican Party. And I think that we are right now seriously in danger of watching the death of our republic because the Republican leadership is not doing what is absolutely necessary. They have the means to defend this country. They have the means to investigate down to the ground what is going on to destroy us. They have the means to publicize it so that we don't need people destroying our national security to tell every American what's going on, because they have the platform from which they could do it without that destruction. And John Boehner and the whole lot of them are refusing to meet their constitutional duty and obligation, which at this stage, given all that we have seen, is to impeach the president and every single official that is responsible for doing these things that are destroying our Constitution and for committing these deceitful high crimes and misdemeanors that are destroying the confidence of the American people in our government. And I think it's quite clear, Stan, they're doing nothing. They're doing worse than nothing. Because instead of impeaching them all, they're busily trying to figure out how they're going to work with them to betray our sovereignty on the immigration issue and on the border and probably on Obamacare. We don't keep their feet thoroughly to a scorching fire. This is wrong, Stan, and I think that it's the bullet you don't hear that kills you. And the bullet we don't hear right now is called the GOP leadership. And if we don't do something to get them out and to get people in who will fight in defense of our Constitution, then all this other stuff isn't going to matter. Because undefended, the walls will fall to even an incompetent and stupid enemy, much less an enemy as well organized and dedicated and filled with fanatical fervor as the ones we're facing now.
Again, there's no disagreement other than I believe that there comes a time when a person has lost it, using that as an example, and maybe Chief can comment here. Someone that is berserk, someone that may have whatever they have in the way of attributes, they come to the point they've lost it, nothing short of a slap upside the face is going to get them back to reality where they can utilize all of the other tools they have. Am I close here, Chief?
Well, the only thing that's going to slap the GOP in the face is losing an election. And so you both made great points. I think what we should really focus on, though, is making sure that we can count the ballots correctly, because the Democrats are cheating like nobody's business. We talked about Alan West earlier in the program, got cheated out of an election, aided by the GOP. But also the Congress, both sides of the House, but our GOP in particular right now, they're good at deflecting things away from us. And I see this immigration bill as a way to deflect us away from their position. So while we're going to be so busy being deluded with these illegal immigrants and new Democrat voters, we're going to be so busy paying for that and dealing with all that and trying to count their illegal votes that we're going to not look at Congress like we should, like Dr. Keith said, keeping their feet pressed firmly to the fire.
Well, in that line, there's a Tea Party alternative immigration bill. I'm sure you're familiar with the Dr. Keys, but basically they have said, and Boehner has responded, if you go along with this Senate disaster, your speakership is over. They came, as you well know, within 12 votes of knocking Boehner out of the speakers, and they've got more than enough votes that if there's commitment, Boehner will no longer be speaker. They could take a vote tomorrow, and he would lose his speakership. He's heard the message and has already announced that, which means nothing. His word's worthless, but he's already announced unless the majority of the Republicans are going for it, he's not even going to bring it up. I only say it in that what you're saying of fire to the feet is in fact being applied, at least in this particular case.
Well, I think it's critical. If I could add one more gloss, though. Part of the problem right now is that folks who are really patriotic, who really support the Constitution, really believe in the moral foundations of this country, they are expending time and effort and energy and resources at a time when the energy and resources of people at the grassroots is under assault, as we all know, with purposefully damaging economic policies that have destroyed the wealth of our middle class, that have attacked the small business arena, that have attacked all of the ways in which regular folks in this country make a living and try to get something that's going to support their families and give them some savings and give them some leeway to devote dollars to the things they believe in. All that's under assault purposefully, as these people try to destroy the wherewithal of the folks who at the grassroots have been responsible for things like the Tea Party effort. All of those resources, Stan, have been, and it happened in 2010 and it happened in 2012 to a degree, you squandered them on a party vehicle that has no intention whatsoever of ever representing you. And how many times are people going to go through this? We talk about Marco Rubio today and all of these folks saying we're back at it. I remember when folks were approaching me about Rubio, and I took a careful look, listened to speeches, did the various things you do to try to get a sense of what someone is like when you don't know a lot about them at first. And he was good looking and articulate and all of this, and some of his things that he said sounded good, but when I sat down and went through them, I reached the conclusion that he was a good sounding person who was saying some conservative things, but he had no foundation. He was not articulating the basic commitment to a lot of the principles we talk about on this show. He was not reasoning from those principles to apply them in policy and so forth. And I said so back in the earlier part of this year after he gave a speech at CPAC. I analyzed that speech and tried to point out to people that say you shouldn't put your confidence here. Because this isn't a principled politician. This isn't what he claimed. He isn't what he claims to be. Now everybody's seeing it. Okay, fine. Everybody sees that he's not a principled politician. And now other names are being sprung up and thrown at us. And I look at them and they suffer from the same flaw. Because I don't believe the Republican Party is going to allow any leader to come to prominence who actually has a commitment to the Declaration and the deep principles of this country's life. So how long are we going to be running after new faces and new voices that are betraying us in the same unprincipled way and waiting until we're knocked over the head by their betrayals before we decide that they're a waste of time? Don't you think we could put those resources of heart and money and energy to a better use? And instead of trying to, I don't know, find some way to stop the rot in this vehicle that has gotten out of our possession into the possession of elitist faction money interests that want to destroy our character with the promotion of homosexuality, that want to destroy our Constitution with the promotion of more and more centralized power in the healthcare sector so that they'll get out from under the burden of that in the private sector. I mean, we know now all about this. And I think, Stan, that instead of devoting our energies to trying to shore up this rotten vehicle called the GOP, it's time we did what Americans have always done when people decide they're no longer going to sell them a good product. They make a better one.
Well,
How come we can't be entrepreneurs in that regard? Have we forgotten how to be Americans in the key area where it counted most, which is in politics?
Let's just hope we've learned that lesson. All right, we're going to take a quick break. We'll come back. There's more on Talk to Solomon. Hey, my name is Stan Solomon, and you know if I have something to say, I'll say it. And I'll only tell you the truth because I'm a Republican, not a Democrat. Democrats always lie. Republicans only lie half the time. I don't lie at all. This is the Fuel Mule. It's an extraordinary product that was developed by a friend of mine, an engineer, and it increases the fuel mileage on your vehicle. If you have a combustion engine, this will increase your mileage by 10 to 20%. It bolts around your fuel line. You can install it yourself or have your mechanic do it. It is an extraordinary item and it flat works. I've been using it for more than 10 years. It's increased my mileage on every vehicle I put it on, and by the way, it will last forever. You can get rid of your vehicle, just take it off and put on the next one. Go to cpnlive.com. You'll have more information there. You can order it right there. We absolutely guarantee you'll be satisfied. The Fuel Mule. It's a way to kick down your cost of fuel and kick up your mileage. Don't you love the name? I thought of it. The Fuel Mule.
For history does not long entrust the care of freedom to the weak or the timid.
Nations may rise, fall, but an idea lives on.
Lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth.
History hasn't been easy on America. We've waged war in foreign fields to secure the blessings of liberty. But history isn't simply the story of our triumphs. It's also the story of our struggles. And we are no strangers to hardship. Each generation of Americans is tested, and we're entering a time of tribulation, disappearing jobs, disappointing politics. But beyond that lies the second American century, a new golden age. Our generation is being called not to win a revolution, but to preserve one, to recall the source of the blessings of liberty before liberty is squandered by those who do not understand that it can be lost forever. We are being called to declare that the principles of our founders are timeless, not temporary, to decide that freedom isn't always comfortable or convenient, but it is always necessary, whether it is in the public space or the marketplace. We are being called to remember simply who we are. When times are toughest, our truest character is revealed. Well, times are tough, and sometimes our politics can seem hopeless. So what do? We do what we have always done, what we're best at.
I fight for freedom.
For our republic.
For my family.
For the free market.
I fight.
I fight.
I fight.
I fight. I fight.
We fight.
I like to eat. Do you like to eat? We all do. And usually we run to the grocery store, we run to the convenience store, or we have something in the fridge. But power's been out in parts of this country in the last few weeks. We don't know what's going to come down the pike economically. Smart people are putting in food. Alpine Air Gourmet Reserves is a line of foods that you can put away that will last for a very long time. You know, they say eat what you store and store what you eat. This is great tasting stuff, healthy for you, a full line. You go to our website, cpnlive.com, and click on the button for Alpine Air Gourmet Reserves and see all the different things we have. This is good tasting food. It's reasonably priced. It will last. And it's worth its weight in gold if a problem arises. I know you don't think there's going to be anything that goes wrong. Actually, you do. This is smart. This is smart insurance. This is smart preparation. This is smart thinking. You have kids, you have a spouse, you have parents, you have dependents, you have an appetite. All those things can be addressed by a frugal but smart investment in Alpine Air Gourmet Reserves. Try them out. You will be tickled to death with the taste of them. You know what? In many cases, people start to eat this and they think, heck, this tastes better and costs less than what you're going to the grocery store to buy. cpnlive.com. Check it out.